So recently, some homeless activists in California came up with an idea of addressing the homeless problem, and it was a $3 billion state-of-the-art city just for the homeless. Now, there's some good ideas in this article, and there's also some bad ideas. First off, if you have to be homeless to get in, but then once you're in, you get a room so you're not homeless anymore, well, you just lost your eligibility if you have to be homeless to get in. So then you get kicked out, but then when you're kicked out, you're homeless again. So then they'll let you in, and then you see your bed, you're about to lay down, but oh, you're not homeless anymore, we got to kick you out. So right off, that's a disaster, not for just homeless. Really, the homeless increase we're seeing in California is because of the housing crisis in general. So what we really need is some affordable, low-rent housing. So not homeless, no income, we need low rent, and I'll get more into that a little bit. But as far as this $3 billion idea for this new city, there's some good ideas in here. Free rent, 16 stories, dormitories, cafeterias, underground tunnels for helping in transportation. We're talking about 300 acres and somewhere in California where it's flat, that this could be built. So this is the ambitious project. Now, why is this needed? Well, they cited it's time to start thinking differently because apparently the government has plans of building 4,000 more shelters, which is a drop in a bucket, really doesn't address anything. And the government, federal and state government, spends a tremendous amount of money trying to fight poverty and homelessness, and so much of this money is wasted through the government because of bureaucracy, corruption, mismanagement, which is why a lot of people are a big fan of Andrew Yang's Freedom Dividend, because that $1,000 goes right into the hands of the people, and you get rid of all that administrative costs and everything else. So yes, what the government doing is not addressing the problem, not even close. The problem just keeps getting worse. So they plan to have hospital, healthcare, food service, on-site job training, and life skills and enrichment at this proposed city. They're going to have neighborhoods that provide communal TVs with tiered seating to fit multiple people. So kind of like these big theater rooms or kind of like a bar where you see a lot of TVs. I would say instead of making them TV rooms, make them multi-purpose rooms. Maybe you, in certain times of the day, you have aerobics and exercise, maybe chess club, have a bunch of different things, not just television. And then each neighborhood will have a cafeteria, kitchen, and several set eating times to adjust to community members' schedules, and also vending machines that are available 24 hours. So this makes sense. And I would say I like this part of it, talking about the dormitory living, which is low-cost living. So that is the right approach if we're going to inject a large amount of low rent units into California, into these neighborhoods that desperately need it. And then once you provide that supply, that winds up lowering the rent around the area because now the supply has gone up. But I don't agree with it being free, and I certainly don't agree with it just being for the homeless, and I'll get more into that later. So going on with this article, it's an ambitious project. Qualified citizens, they didn't completely reveal what the criteria was. They did talk about this underground system for transportation where people would get to their jobs outside of the city. So what they're proposing, and getting more back to this free thing, so somebody who's working can still be qualified to live here for free. Well, imagine if you're working and you're spending $2,000 a month to live in a closet, and then you find out your coworker is going to someplace and able to live for free. So how does that work out? And it just doesn't make sense to have this free. And obviously, with Andrew Yang's Freedom Dividend, with every United States citizen getting $1,000 a month, it doesn't have to be free. and that gets rid of so much issues, as well, and puts a value on every human being. Now, the $1,000 a month with the Freedom Dividend, that would replace some current programs. Like, for example, if you're getting SSI, it's either one or the other, and you would just choose which one's getting more money. Like, for example, if you're getting unemployment and it's $2,000 a month, then you're going to keep your employment, but you're not going to get that Freedom Dividend of $1,000. But when that employment runs out, okay, now at least you still got that $1,000. We talk about SSI. If you're getting 770 SSI, then obviously the $1,000 with the Freedom Dividend makes more sense. And also, there's another advantage of the Freedom Dividend over SSI. If you're receiving SSI and you work, your SSI goes down. But with the Freedom Dividend, that's still $1,000 even when you're working. So that doesn't depress, and you don't. With SSI, you have to report your income every month, and then once again, you'll lose that amount depending on how much you make. So big advantages to the Freedom Dividend, getting money to the people that needs it, and getting rid of so much government bureaucracy and administrative costs in the process. So this city, they're proposing 16-story dormitories, providing residents with sleeping quarters, communal bathrooms, private showers. So in other words, you got a small room to sleep. You got to leave that room for shared spaces such as bathrooms, but they would have private showers. Cafeteria, kitchen, different eating times, talked about the TV rooms, or I would say they should be multi-purpose rooms, underground area. Okay, so how are they going to pay for this? And this is where you see it just falls apart. It's not going to happen. The group set up a GoFundMe to raise $50,000 on Wednesday. Well, today is Wednesday. What good is $50,000 going to do you if this is $3 billion? And so far, they only have $1,450 of that $50,000. So this isn't going to happen. And let's say even if you did have that $3 billion and you built it, well, how do you maintain it? There's going to be security costs, administration, management, utilities, things like garbage removal, cleaning. So this just is not going to happen. This is just pie in the sky stuff. Now, when you think about it, with Andrew Yang's Freedom Dividend, they're talking about they want this to be able to house an estimated 150,000 homeless people. Well, if all those people are getting $1,000 a month, that is $150 million a month for that 150,000 people. That's $1.8 billion a year. So once again, this doesn't have to be free. And if it's low rent, it could be enough where it could sustain itself. And really, that's the ideal solution. And let's see, anything more in this article? Any more ideas? It talks about the federal government spent $6.1 billion on homelessness. So yeah, federal, state programs spending a tremendous amount, but very little of that money going to the people that need it. Talks about California has an estimated 130,000 residents experience homelessness on every given day. 10,000 were veterans, and talks about areas like San Francisco and kind of what they're doing to, they're erecting structures to help stop homeless people from camping out in certain areas. Now, it certainly is a big issue, and I agree with the dormitory approach for low rent, but really I don't agree with anything else. Obviously, it's not going to be funded. It doesn't make sense to make it free, and really we have to address the overall housing crisis that's happening. Now, here's a real solution rather than this pie in the sky stuff. First off, we start with Andrew Yang's Freedom Dividend. And then, rather than building a new city, why not make use of dead malls? You look at dead malls across the country, that is a tremendous amount of space. Now, let's say in what used to be an anchor like a Sears, where you have a large amount of space, let's say you put 100 of these dorm-style units. And the thing about malls, you already have the structure, you already have these big bathrooms, you already have plumbing. So really, we're talking about remodeling rather than building from the ground up. Now, let's say you have 100 of these units and you're charging $200 a month, well, then that would be $20,000 a month coming in from that space. Now, right now, how much is coming from that space? Zero. And this gets into another one of Andrew Yang's policy, which is the American Mall Act, revitalizing these malls, because as he says, these giant spaces need to be revitalized in order to spur investment in the local economy and combat this suburban urban blight associated with the closing of these malls. And there's another policy that addresses this as well, and that's Andrew Yang's zoning policy. A big thing happening in California is you can't get anything done. There's so much bureaucracy. If you are a brilliant builder, you know everything about building, you have this plan of building a structure for affordable housing, and you want to get it done, this 100% is going to work, you can't get it done. You're going to be spending years in committees where you who know what you're doing are going to be blocked by people who don't know anything. Complete morons who have their heads completely up their butt are going to stop you from doing anything. So things don't get done. That's the state of California. So you actually need some kind of federal policy to cut through this nonsense. And this is what Andrew Yang's has in his zoning policy. Through NIMBY, not in my backyard, and zoning laws, the ability of new housing to be built in certain areas has been impeded to the point where a vast majority of Americans can't afford to live in the largest cities, cites San Francisco, cites New York. We need to make it easier for people to afford housing, either renting or buying. So, Freedom Dividend, American Malls Act, zoning policy, making use of dead malls, and not just dead malls. I used to work in an office that was huge. It was 3 stories, had 3 big wings, big open area for cafeteria and seating. That office space has been empty for 7 years. So certainly we have a lot of areas that aren't being used. When you look at this dormitory, approach, can house a lot of people at a low cost. And I wanted to emphasize something. Low rent, not low income. In Chicago, there's these enormous housing projects. Originally, they were low rent, and they worked. But then they made them low income. So what happened? Anybody who was middle income was driven out. Well, that was a problem because when you had that mixed community, when you had low income and middle income, you had these people interacting where people who are low income could get contacts, talk to people who are middle and say, okay, well, what do you do for a job? What skills do you have? How can I get into that industry? So they had a place where they can get these connections. So you just drive out the middle class. All you have is low income. And then with low income, well, if you get a second job, if you get a promotion, then you're scared because if you go up this certain number as far as income, then your rent suddenly doubles. So it actually incentivized the lower class not to do better, not to better their lives. And that's when these places, these housing projects in Chicago, many of them notorious, just became absolute disasters. So not low income, not homeless only, make them low rent. Make them low rent. Also, rules, law and order, strict law enforcement. For example, people at night have the right for it to be quiet. They have the right to sleep. Anybody that's being loud at 1 a.m., shut that down immediately. Somebody in a hallway shooting up, okay, you got 2 choices. Either you go to rehab or you'll be escorted off the property. You are not welcome here. We have to have effective law enforcement. Otherwise, these places are going to be crime-ridden. They're not going to be safe. People are going to move out. They're going to be taken over by gangs, and they're going to become crap holes. Law and order, strict law enforcement, 24-hour security, security cameras, body cams. These places need to be safe for this to work. Very important, because there's certain people out there with the mentality that, oh, people just come together, everybody's going to behave. There are people out there, they're extremely naive. Naive people are dangerous. Naive people can be just as dangerous as people with bad intent. Think about the following scenario. You're walking down a sidewalk, Somebody in a car who's intentionally trying to run you over sees you, drives up on a sidewalk, runs you over. Second scenario, some guy's driving drunk or they're texting on their phone, not looking, the car goes up on a sidewalk and kills you. Both scenarios, you're dead. One's intentional, one's through incompetence. So be very careful of naive people. A big problem with cities like San Francisco is you have naive people telling police officers not to do their jobs, and then these communities are becoming crap holes. It's ridiculous. We need law enforcement. Machiavelli was right. You need good arms and good laws for people to behave. And then once again, make it low rent, not low income. If somebody with money's going to go in there, which are probably not, I mean, is somebody really going to give up having a kitchen in their own place, having a bathroom in their own place, having a garage and a car to have dormitory style living? Very unlikely. But if they do, you know what? 1 unit per person, you have to live there. And okay, fine. Somebody who has resources can actually help other people that are there. Actually, it would be very easy to help them. So just make it low rent. Now, these ideas have existed for years. This is nothing new. Oh, we got all this space and in dead malls and maybe some other structures as well. Why not have housing when we have this housing crisis? But nothing is getting done. But we see with Andrew Yang's policy, here are policies that would be the best way of getting things done, moving forward, and addressing this housing crisis that's going on. So once again, Freedom Dividend, the American Mall Act, zoning policy, using dead malls, possibly other areas as well, rules, law and order, strict law enforcement, facilities for helping people that are disabled that are not violent towards other human beings, facilities that can help the elderly that are independent but still need some assistance. So there's a lot of ideas and absolutely viable real solutions that can be put in place and address these issues. But why isn't it getting done? We're lacking the leadership and the vision. Andrew Yang has the leadership and he has the vision. The best way of addressing this housing crisis in California that's spurring this huge increase in homelessness is Andrew Yang 2020. This is Jim Wall. Thanks for watching. Until next time.
Cisco, do we have to leave all our good friends now?
Only until next time, Pancho. Adios, amigos.